How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, November 22nd, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances from yesterday, November 21st. And just to take a quick overview of where we are at this point in the calendar year, with the MLB season being over and all that's left being awards to be given out. In terms of football, the football seasons are coming to a close as college football is coming into its rivalry week. The NFL is in its second half of its season. Basketball just got started in the NBA and in college as well. And of course, internationally, we're nearing the halfway point in the soccer season, as of course the halfway point is the end of the year. But quickly first, looking out what's going on in college basketball, starting with the fourth-ranked team in the nation. The Michigan Wolverines faced off against the unranked Arizona Wildcats, and the unranked Wildcats were able to get the win over the Wolverines. They won this one 80-62 at the Roman main event. Arizona outscored Michigan by 8 in the first half and by 10 in the second. The fourth-ranked Michigan Wolverines on the losing end of this matchups were led by their starting guard, Eli Brooks. He finished with 14 points and 5 rebounds in 35 minutes. He shot 5 for 9 from the field, and he went 4 for 6 from the foul line. The unranked Arizona Wildcats, on the other end, were led in scoring by their starting center, Christian Coloco, their starting junior out of Cameroon. Christian Coloco would go on to finish with 22 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 blocks in 30 minutes. He shot 8 for 13 from the field, and he shot a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. With this win, the unranked Arizona Wildcats are 5-0, and with this loss, the fourth-ranked Michigan Wolverines are 3-2. Taking a look at the fifth-ranked team in the nation, the Villanova Wildcats went to Purdue to face off against the sixth-ranked Purdue Boilermakers in the Cheez-It Hall of Fame tip-off tournament. Purdue would end up beating Villanova after Nova outscored Purdue by 2 in the first half. Purdue outscored Villanova by 8 in the second half to win this game 80-74. The fifth-ranked Nova Wildcats on the losing end of this matchup were led in scoring by their starting point guard Justin Moore out of Maryland. Justin Moore will go on to finish with 19 points in 37 minutes as he shot 7 for 15 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and 2 for 4 from the foul line. The Purdue Boilermakers on the winning end of this matchup were led in scoring by their starting center, Zach Edey. Zach Edey, their 7'4" sophomore out of Ontario, would finish with 21 points and 6 rebounds in 20 minutes. He shot 9 for 12 from the field and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the 6th-ranked Purdue Boilermakers are 5-0, and with this loss, the 5th-ranked Villanova Wildcats are 3-2. Looking at the 17th-ranked team in the nation, these Tennessee Volunteers were able to beat the 18th-ranked North Carolina Tar Heels within that same Cheez-It Hall of Fame tip-off. Tennessee outscored North Carolina by 9 in the first half and by 10 in the second in order to win by 17. On the losing end of this matchup, the 18th-ranked UNC Tar Heels were led in scoring by their forward off the bench, Brady Manick, their senior out of Oklahoma. He went on to finish with 24 points in 28 minutes as he shot 7 for 12 from the field, 6 for 10 from 3, and he made all 4 of his free throw attempts on the night. The 17th-ranked Vols were led in scoring by their guard off the bench, Zakai Ziegler. Their freshman out of Long Island would go on to finish with 18 points, 5 assists, and 2 steals in 27 minutes. He shot 7 for 10 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and he made his only free throw attempt of the night. With this win, the 17th-ranked Tennessee Volunteers are now 3-1 to start their season. And of course, with this loss, the 18th-ranked North Carolina Tar Heels are now 3-2. Looking at the 22nd-ranked team in the nation, the St. Bonaventure Bonnies went to Marquette to beat the Golden Eagles 70-54 in Charleston, to give Marquette their very first loss of the season. St. Bonnies outscored Marquette by 8 points in both halves to win the game by 16. The Bonnies were led in scoring by their starting guard, Jaron Holmes, their senior out of Michigan. Jaron Holmes would go on to finish with 22 points. He finished with 19 points and 13 rebounds in 38 minutes. He shot 5 for 14 from the field, and he would go 8 for 12 from the foul line. With this win, the 22nd ranked Bonnies are 5-0, still have yet to lose a game this season. And with this loss, the unranked Marquette Golden Eagles are now 5-1 at this point in the year. That is what college basketball is looking like, and since there wasn't college football, that's everything that's going on in the collegiate sphere. Taking a look now as we go to the professional level within the state, starting with the NFL. Starting off in Buffalo, the Bills hosted the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts would end up beating the Bills 41-15. Looking at this matchup, the Colts would end up outscoring the Bills 24-7 in the first half before outscoring the Bills 17-8 in the second half. On the losing end, the Bills were led by their elite starting quarterback, Josh Allen. He completed 21 of his 35 passes as he threw for 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He would also run for 18 yards, so that's 227 total yards of offense specifically for Josh Allen. Their leading receiver, Dawson Knox, finished with 6 receptions for 80 yards on the day. Their leading tackler, Matt Milano, finished with 9 on the day as the team was unable to register a sack or an interception. The Indianapolis Colts on the winning end were led by their starting quarterback, former MVP candidate Carson Wentz. Wentz threw for 106 yards and a touchdown and also ran for 18. That would be 124 yards of offense. Indianapolis's leading carrier, their leading rusher, Jonathan Taylor, finished with 32 carries for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. He also had 3 receptions for 19 yards, and he had the team's only receiving touchdown. So, of course, he would go on to finish with 204 total yards of offense and 5 touchdowns for the Colts, all 5 of the touchdowns that the Colts would need. On the defensive side of the ball, the Colts were led in tackles by Bobby Okereke as he finished with 7 tackles on the day. George Odom, Kenny Moore II, and Zaire Franklin would combine for the team's 3 interceptions. With this win, the Indianapolis Colts are 6-5, and with this loss, the Buffalo Bills are 6-4. Of course, following that, taking a look at what's going on in the Midwest in the battle between the 2 young elite quick twitch quarterbacks, the Chicago Bears hosted the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens would end up beating the Bears 16-13. The Ravens shut Chicago out in the first half 6-0. The Bears outscored the Ravens 13-10 in the second half. This game would come down to a 3-yard touchdown run for Devontae Freeman at the very end of this game to win it for Baltimore at the end. The Bears were led by their starting quarterback, Andy Dalton. He threw for 201 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their backup quarterback, their elite quarterback, Justin Fields, would end up completing 4 of his 11 passes for 79 yards. He also had 4 carries for 23 yards, so that, of course, would combine for 102 total yards of offense for Fields. Their leading receiver, Darnell Mooney, had 5 receptions for 121 yards and a touchdown. Their second leading receiver, Marquise Goodwin, had 4 receptions for 104 yards and the other receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Roquan Smith led the team in tackles. He had 17 of them. Robert Quinn would finish with 5 tackles as he had 3.5 sacks of the team's 6. And then Tashawn Gibson for the Bears would have the only interception for the day. On the winning end of this matchup, the Ravens were led by their starting quarterback, Tyler Huntley. Huntley threw for 219 yards and an interception. He would also run for 40 yards. That's 259 total yards of offense. The Baltimore Ravens leading rusher, Devontae Freeman, had 16 carries for 49 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He also had 6 receptions for 31 yards in the air, so that would be 80 total yards of offense. And on the defensive side of the ball, the Ravens' leading tackler was Patrick Queen. He had 7 of them. Tyus Bowser had 5 tackles as he had 2 of the team's 3 sacks. And then, of course, on his birthday, Justin Tucker would end up going 3 for 3 on field goals, his longest being 46 yards, and he would make his extra point. So happy 32nd birthday to the Ravens' elite place kicker, Justin Tucker. Following this win, the Ravens are now 7-3, and with this loss, the Chicago Bears are now officially 3-7. Looking now at what's going on in Ohio, the Cleveland Browns hosted the Detroit Lions. The Browns would end up beating the Lions 13-10 to assure that the Lions would still remain without a win. The Browns shut the Lions out 13-0 in the first half. That's where all their points came in the second quarter. And the Lions shut the Browns out 10-0 in the second half, but it wouldn't be enough. On the losing end, the Lions were led by their starting quarterback, Tim Boyle, who threw for 77 yards and 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher, DeAndre Swift, had 14 carries for 136 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Their leading tackler on the defensive side of the ball was Tracy Walker III. He had nine total tackles. Amani Oruwariye would finish with one of the team's 2 picks, and A.J. Parker would finish with the other. And, of course, on the winning end of this matchup, the Cleveland Browns were led by their starting quarterback, Baker Mayfield. Mayfield threw for 176 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions as he ran for an additional 9. That would combine for 185 total yards of offense. The Browns' leading carrier, Nick Chubb, their elite running back, had 22 carries for 130 yards on the ground. He had 2 receptions for 114 yards, and his only touchdown came through the air, as he would combine for 144 total yards of offense, and his receiving touchdown was his lone touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Anthony Walker would lead the Browns in tackles as he had 8 of them. Malcolm Smith and Denzel Ward would have the team's 2 interceptions. With this win, the Cleveland Browns are now 6-5, and with this loss, the Detroit Lions are now officially 0-9-1 on the season. Jumping to Tennessee, the Titans hosted the Houston Texans. The Texans would end up beating the Titans from within their own division, shutting the Titans out 12-0 in the first half. Tennessee would outscore Houston 13-10 in the second half, but it wouldn't be enough. On the losing end, the Titans were led by their starting quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill threw for 323 yards, a touchdown, and 4 interceptions. He also ran additional 3 yards, so that's 326 total yards of offense. Tennessee's leading receiver was Nick Westbrook-Ikine. He finished with 7 receptions for 107 yards on the day. On the defensive side of the ball, Jayon Brown finished with 14 tackles. And looking at the winning end of this matchup, the Houston Texans were led by their starting quarterback, Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor would throw for 107 yards, and he would also run for 28 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Virginia Tech product would finish with 135 total yards of offense to his name as his 2 touchdowns came on the ground. In the defensive side of the ball, Kamu Grugier-Hill would finish with the team's most tackles as he finished with 12 of them. Eric Murray and Zach Cunningham each finished with 11 tackles for the team. Kamu Grugier-Hill, in addition to leading the team in tackles with 12 of them, he had an interception for himself that went 82 yards but wasn't a touchdown. Terrence Mitchell would finish with 8 tackles and an interception. Desmond King II would finish with 8 tackles as he finished with 2 interceptions for the team. With this win, the Houston Texans are 2-8. With this loss, the Tennessee Titans, who lead the AFC South, are now 8-3. Taking a look now at what's going on in Minneapolis, the Minnesota Vikings hosted their division rival, and in this time they went on to face the Green Bay Packers. And, of course, in this matchup, what was a hard-fought matchup, the Vikings would end up beating the Packers 34-31 as the Minnesota Vikings outscored the Packers 16-10 in the first half. The Packers outscored the Vikings 21-18 in the second half. At the very end, it would be a Greg Joseph 29-yard field goal for the very final play of the game to give the Vikings said win. On the losing end of this matchup, the Packers were led by their goated starting quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. He completed 23 of his 33 passes, throwing for 385 yards and 4 touchdowns. He would also run for 21 as he finished with 406 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, A.J. Dillon, had 11 carries for 53 yards. He also had 6 receptions for 44. He would combine for 97 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, finished with 4 receptions for 123 yards and a touchdown. Devontae Adams, their elite wide receiver, finished with 7 receptions for 115 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns of the team's 4. Devondre Campbell and Darnell Savage led the Packers in tackles as they both had 7 of them. Preston Smith would finish with 6 tackles as he had both of the team's sacks. On the winning end of this matchup, the Vikings were led by their starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins, out of Michigan State. He threw for 341 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher, Dalvin Cook, their elite running back out of Florida State, had 22 carries for 86 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He had 3 receptions for 29 yards through the air, so that would be 115 total yards of offense for Cook. Their leading receiver was their elite wide receiver out of LSU, Justin Jefferson. He finished with 8 receptions for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. Adam Thielen, their second leading receiver, had 8 receptions for 82 yards as he had the other receiving touchdown for the Vikings. On the defensive side of the ball, Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr would each finish with double-digit tackles. Kendricks had 11 tackles. Barr had 10 of them. And then with this win, the Minnesota Vikings are 5-5. With this loss, the Green Bay Packers are now officially 8-3. Now taking a look at what's going on in New York, the Jets hosted the Miami Dolphins from within their division. The Dolphins would end up beating the Jets 24-17 after both teams were tied at the end of the first half at 7. The Dolphins outscored the Jets 17-10 in the second half in order to run away with this win. On the losing end of this matchup, the Jets were led by their starting quarterback, Joe Flacco. He threw for 291 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 3 yards. That's 294 total yards of offense. The Jets' leading receiver was Elijah Moore. He had 8 receptions for 141 yards and a touchdown. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Quincy Williams would lead the Jets in tackles. He would finish with 15 of them. Ashton Davis would finish with the team's lone interception as he had 4 tackles. On the losing end of this match, or on the winning end of this matchup, the Miami Dolphins were led by their elite starting quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa out of Alabama. He completed 27 of his 33 passes, throwing for 273 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He also ran for an additional 6 yards. That's 279 yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Myles Gaskin, finished with 23 carries for 89 yards as he had 7 receiving yards and a touchdown through the air. That's 96 total yards of offense for Miami. Their leading receiver, Mac Hollins, had 2 receptions for 72 yards as he had a touchdown as well. On the defensive side of the ball, Javon Holland led the team in tackles as he had 7 of them and even recovered a fumble. With this win, the Miami Dolphins are now 4-7, and now officially with this loss, the New York Jets are now 2-8 to get a sense of where they are. Taking a look now at what happened in Philadelphia. The Eagles hosted the New Orleans Saints, and the Philadelphia Eagles would beat the Saints 40-29. They outscored the Saints 27-7 in the first half. The Saints outscored the Eagles 22-13 in the second half, but it wouldn't be close to enough. On the losing end of this matchup, the Saints were led by their starting quarterback, Trevor Siemian. He threw for 214 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. He ran for 16 yards and an additional touchdown. That's 230 yards and 4 touchdowns for him. The Saints' leading carrier was Mark Ingram. He had 16 carries for 88 yards on the ground. He would finish with 6 receptions for 25 yards through the air. That would be 113 total yards of offense. New Orleans' second leading receiver, Adam Troutman, finished with 5 receptions for 58 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Marcus Davenport led the team in tackles and in sacks. He had 10 tackles and he had a sack and a half. On the winning end of this matchup, the Eagles were led by their starting quarterback, former Heisman winner, Jalen Hurts. Hurts would end up throwing for 147 yards. He would end up rushing for 69 yards on 18 carries as he had 3 touchdowns. He would go on to combine for 216 total yards of offense. The Eagles' leading ball carrier was Miles Sanders. He had 16 carries for 94 yards of offense. And then, of course, not to mention alongside him in the receiving game, Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith each finished with over 60 yards receiving. On the defensive side of the ball, TJ Edwards led the Eagles in tackles as he had 10 of them. The team wouldn't register a single sack. However, TJ Edwards would also register an interception. The other interception for the Eagles went to their elite corner, Darius Slay, who registered a tackle and a 51-yard pick six. With this win, the Philadelphia Eagles are now 5-6. With this loss, the New Orleans Saints are now 5-5. Taking a quick look now at what is going on in Charlotte, the Carolina Panthers hosted the Washington football team. Washington would end up beating Carolina 27-21. Both teams would be even at 14 in the first half. Washington outscored Carolina 27-21 in the second half. And after Carolina tied the game at 21 in the fourth quarter, it would be a couple of field goals that would be the difference for Washington. On the losing end of this matchup, the Carolina Panthers were led by their former MVP starting quarterback, Cam Newton. He threw for 189 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 10 carries for 46 yards and an additional touchdown. Of course, he would go on to finish with 135 total yards of offense with his 3 touchdowns. The Panthers' elite running back, Christian McCaffrey, finished with 10 carries for 59 yards on the ground. He was also the team's leading receiver with 7 receptions for 60 yards. His only touchdown came off of a reception. He would finish with 119 total yards of offense. Their second leading receiver, DJ Moore, had 5 receptions for 50 yards as he had the other receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Jeremy Chin led the Panthers in tackles as he finished with 13 of them. And then on the winning end of this matchup, the Washington football team was led by their starting quarterback, Taylor Heineke. Heineke would throw for 206 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also ran for 29, so that's 235 total yards of offense with his 3 touchdowns. Washington's leading rusher, Antonio Gibson, had 19 carries for 95 yards on the ground. Their leading receiver, Terry McLaurin, had 5 receptions for 103 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Cole Holcomb led the Washington football team in tackles as he had 10 of them. With this win, the Washington football team is now 4-6. With this loss, the Carolina Panthers are now officially 5-6. Now taking a look at what is going on in Jacksonville, the Jaguars hosted the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners would end up beating the Jaguars pretty bad. They beat them 30-10. The Niners outscored the Jags 20-3 in the first half before outscoring them 10-7 in the second. On the losing end, the Jaguars were led by their elite starting quarterback, Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. He would complete 16 of his 25 passes as he threw for 158 yards on the day. He also ran for an additional 23, which would be 181 total yards of offense. Their leading tackler on the defensive side of the ball was Miles Jack. He finished with 12 tackles, and Josh Allen finished with 10. On the winning end of this matchup, the San Francisco 49ers were led by their starting quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. He threw for 176 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for an additional 6 yards. That's 182 total yards of offense for him. The 49ers their leading rusher first was Deebo Samuel. He had 8 carries for 79 yards and a touchdown. He also had a 15-yard reception, so he had 94 total yards of offense for the 49ers. And then also their leading receiver, Brandon Ayuk, would finish with 7 receptions for 85 yards and a touchdown. Not to mention that their elite tight end, George Kittle, had 4 receptions for 34 yards and a touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Fred Warner would lead the team with 7 tackles. Their elite defensive end, Nick Bosa, had 3 tackles as he would finish with 2 of the 49ers' 3 sacks on the day. With this win, the San Francisco 49ers are now 5-5. With this loss, the Jacksonville Jaguars are now 2-8 on the year. And taking a really quick look at what's going on out in Vegas, the Raiders hosted the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals would end up beating the Raiders 32-13. They outscored the Raiders 10-6 in the first half before outscoring Las Vegas 22-7 in the second half. The Raiders were led by their starting quarterback, Derek Carr, younger brother of former number 1 overall pick David Carr. Derek Carr would throw for 215 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Their leading receiver, Darren Waller, finished with 7 receptions for 116 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, the Raiders' leading tacklers were Denzel Perryman and Jonathan Abram. They both had 12 tackles on the day. On the Bengals side of this matchup, they were led by their former number 1 overall pick, Joe Burrow. Burrow threw for 148 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 11. That's 159 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher was Joe Mixon. He had 30 carries for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Bengals' their leading tackler was Von Bell as he finished with 6 tackles on the day. And then Eli Apple out of Ohio State would have the team's only interception as it came alongside his 3 tackles. With this win, the Cincinnati Bengals are 6-4. With this loss, the Las Vegas Raiders are now 5-5 at this point in the season. Taking a look at now at what's going on with the reigning AFC champs, the Kansas City Chiefs hosted the Dallas Cowboys. The Chiefs would end up beating the Cowboys 19-9 after they outscored the Cowboys 16-3 in the first half. Dallas outscored Kansas City 6-3 in the second half, but it wouldn't be enough. The Cowboys were led by their starting quarterback, Dak Prescott. Prescott threw for 216 yards and 2 interceptions. The Cowboys' leading tackler on defense was Keanu Neal out of Florida. He finished with 7 tackles. Micah Parsons finished with 4 tackles as he had 2 sacks for himself as he's having an amazing rookie year. Jaron Kearse would finish with the team's only interception as he returned to 34 yards. On the winning end of this matchup, the Chiefs were led by their elite starting quarterback, the $500 million man, Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes completed 23 of his 37 passes as he threw for 260 yards and an interception. He also ran for 11 yards, so that's 271 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher was Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of LSU. He had 12 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. He also had 2 receptions for 13 yards, so that's 76 total yards of offense for him. Their elite wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, had 9 receptions for 77 yards and a 33-yard carry. That would combine, of course, for 110 total yards of offense. And on the defensive side of the ball, Charvarius Ward would finish with the most tackles on the Chiefs. He had 7. Chris Jones, their elite defensive tackle, would finish with 5 tackles. He had 3.5 sacks on the day. The team would combine for 5 sacks. And then L'Jarius Sneed, while finishing with 6 tackles on the day, second most on the team, he had 1 interception. And Charvarius Ward, the player who had the most tackles on the team, he was also responsible for getting an interception for the Chiefs. With this win, the Kansas City Chiefs are now 7-4. With this loss, the Dallas Cowboys are now 7-3 at this point in the year. Taking a look now at what is going on in Seattle, the Seahawks hosted the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals would end up getting the better of the Seahawks, winning this matchup 23-13. Arizona outscored Seattle 13-6 in the first half before outscoring the Seahawks 10-7 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Seahawks were led by their elite starting quarterback, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson would complete 14 of his 26 passes as he threw for 207 yards. He also ran for 2 yards, so that's 209 yards for him. Their leading receiver, Tyler Lockett, would finish with 4 receptions for 115 yards on the day. Their leading tackler, Jordan Brooks, finished with 15 of them. Their elite linebacker, Bobby Wagner, finished with 13 tackles, and Sidney Jones IV would finish with 11 tackles for himself. Brian Moan would finish with 4 tackles as he finished with a sack and a half. And on the winning end of this matchup, the Arizona Cardinals were led by their starting quarterback, Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy threw for 328 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 18 yards. That would combine for 346 total yards of offense. Arizona's leading rusher was James Conner, the former Steelers running back. He had 21 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He had 5 receptions for 37 yards through the air. That would be 99 total yards of offense for James Conner. Arizona's leading receiver, Zach Ertz, finished with 8 receptions for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then their second leading receiver, A.J. Green, would finish with 4 receptions for 78 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Jordan Hicks finished with 8 tackles. Chandler Jones, their elite defensive end, finished with 4 tackles as he had 2 sacks for himself, 2 of the team's 4. With this win, the Arizona Cardinals are 9-2. They are still undefeated on the road. And then, of course, following this loss from within the same division, the Seattle Seahawks are now officially 3-7 with this loss. Last but not least, taking you to what went down for Sunday Night Football. The Los Angeles Chargers hosted the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Chargers would end up beating the Steelers 41-37. The Chargers outscored the Steelers 17-10 in the first half. The Steelers outscored the Chargers 27-24 in the second half, scoring all 27 of their points in the fourth quarter. But of course, at the end, it would not be enough, as even though or I guess it would be enough for them to take the lead, but then the Chargers would win the game with 2 minutes left off of a 53-yard touchdown pass from Justin Herbert to Mike Williams. On the losing end of this matchup, the Pittsburgh Steelers were led by their elite starting quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger would complete 28 of his 44 passes as the University of Miami, Ohio product would throw for 273 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading receiver was Deontay Johnson. He finished with 7 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown. Their second leading receiver, Chase Claypool, had 5 receptions for 93 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Cameron Sutton finished with 10 tackles on the day. Their third leading tackler, Alex Highsmith, had 6 tackles as he had a sack and a half. Cameron Sutton would finish with an interception, of course, for himself, as he also finished with the team high in tackles. On the winning end of this matchup, the Los Angeles Chargers were led by their young elite starting quarterback, Justin Herbert. Herbert would complete 30 of his 41 passes as he threw for 382 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He was also the team's leading rusher as he had 9 carries for 90 yards. He would finish with 472 total yards of offense. The Chargers' second leading rusher, Austin Eckler, had 11 carries for 50 yards as he had 2 rushing touchdowns. He also had 6 receptions as he had 65 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. He would go on to finish with 115 total yards of offense as he was responsible for 4 touchdowns. The LA Chargers leading receiver, their elite wide receiver Keenan Allen, finished with 9 receptions for 112 yards. Mike Williams, their second leading receiver, had 5 receptions for 97 yards and a touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Kazir White would lead the team in tackles as he had 9 of them. Their elite defensive end, Joey Bosa, would finish with 4 tackles as he had a sack for himself as well. With this win, the Los Angeles Chargers are now 6-4 on the season. With this loss, the Pittsburgh Steelers are now 5-4-1 on the season. And of course, these are all the games from yesterday, as today's Monday night matchup, of course, between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending Super Bowl champs, and the New York Giants will be the very final game of Week 11. As, of course, there are still 7 more weeks after this in the NFL season. Taking a look at what's going on in the NBA, starting off in the Staples Center, the Los Angeles Clippers hosted the Dallas Mavericks. The Los Angeles Clippers would end up beating the Mavericks at home. The Clippers won this one 97-91 after they outscored the Mavericks by 10 points in the third quarter. The Mavericks were led in scoring by their starting Latvian center, Kristaps Porzingis. He finished with 25 points, 8 rebounds, and a couple of blocks in 32 minutes. He shot 10 for 18 from the field and 5 for 6 from the foul line. Their starting point guard, Jalen Brunson, finished with 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 steals in 35 minutes. He shot 7 for 13 from the field, and he would go on to make all 5 of his free throw attempts on the night. The Los Angeles Clippers were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard, Paul George. George finished with 29 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, and 6 turnovers in 38 minutes. He shot 12 for 25 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. And then their starting point guard, Reggie Jackson, would finish with 23 points in 35 minutes, shooting 8 for 14 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Los Angeles Clippers crossed the double-digit win threshold. They are now 10-7. With this loss, the Dallas Mavericks are now 9-7, still looking for their 10th win. Jumping out to Detroit, the Pistons hosted the LA Lakers, and the Los Angeles Lakers would end up beating the Pistons 121-116 after LeBron James would end up getting ejected after a fight with Detroit Pistons big man or Isaiah Stewart. The Lakers would go on to outscore the Pistons by 20 points in the fourth quarter to come from behind and pick up a very big win to get back at 500. On the losing end of this matchup, the Detroit Pistons were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Jeremy Grant. He finished with 36 points in 37 minutes as he shot 12 for 25 from the field, 5 for 9 from 3, and he shot 7 for 10 from the foul line. The Los Angeles Lakers on the winning end were led in scoring by their elite starting power forward, Anthony Davis. Davis finished with 30 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, and 5 blocks in 40 minutes as he shot 11 for 19 from the field and 8 for 10 from the foul line. Their elite starting shooting guard, Russell Westbrook, finished with 26 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 rebounds, 10 assists, and 2 steals in 35 minutes. As the NBA's all-time leader in triple-doubles, he finished shooting 10 for 21 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, and 5 for 8 from the foul line. Their goated small forward, LeBron James, would finish with 10 points and 5 assists in 21 minutes as he shot 4 for 7 from the field, 1 for 9 from 3, and he made his only free throw of the night, as he, of course, keeps up his incredibly long streak of games where he scored double digits. With this win, the Los Angeles Lakers are now 9-9. With this loss, the Detroit Pistons are now 4-12. Jumping out to Chicago, the Bulls hosted the New York Knicks. The Bulls would end up beating the Knicks 109-103, winning this game by 6 after they outscored the Knicks by 8 to come from behind and pick up this win. In the fourth quarter itself. On the losing end of this matchup, the Knicks were led in scoring by their starting power forward, their former all-star, Julius Randle. He finished with 34 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 turnovers in 39 minutes. He shot 13 for 19 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and 7 for 8 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, Kemba Walker, would finish with 7 points, 2 rebounds, and 4 assists in 18 minutes. He shot 3 for 9 from the field and 1 for 4 from 3. The Chicago Bulls were led in scoring by their starting small forward out of USC, DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan finished with 31 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals in 38 minutes. He shot 10 for 20 from the field. He went a perfect 2 for 2 from 3 and a perfect 9 for 9 from the foul line. Their starting shooting guard out of UCLA, Zach LaVine, finished with 21 points. He would also finish with 6 rebounds as well in 36 minutes as he shot 7 for 20 from the field and a perfect 7 for 7 from the foul line. With this win, the Chicago Bulls are now 12-5 on the year, and with this loss, the New York Knicks are now 9-8. Taking a look now at what is going on in Phoenix. The Phoenix Suns hosted the Denver Nuggets, and the Suns were able to win yet another game in a row as they beat the Nuggets 126-97. They won this game by 29 points after they outscored the Nuggets by 20 in the first quarter, and then they outscored them by an additional 16 points in the second half. The Nuggets were led in scoring by their starting power forward, JaMychal Green. JaMychal Green will go on to Jeff Green will go on to finish with 19 points in 30 minutes as he went on to shoot 6 for 10 from the field and 6 for 8 from the foul line. And then on the winning end of this matchup, the Phoenix Suns were led in scoring by their starting center, former number 1 overall pick, DeAndre Ayton. At least he led the starters in scoring. He finished with 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 26 minutes. He shot 9 for 12 from the field and 3 for 4 from the foul line. Their leading scorer actually came off the bench as their small forward, Cam Johnson out of UNC, finished with 22 points in 23 minutes. He shot 9 for 15 from the field and 4 for 10 from 3. Their elite starting shooting guard, Devon Booker, finished with 17 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists in 28 minutes. He shot 7 for 12 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and he made his only free throw attempt of the night. Their elite starting point guard, double-digit time all-star Chris Paul, finished with 9 points, 3 rebounds, and 10 assists in 24 minutes. Chris Paul shot 2 for 4 from the field and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Phoenix Suns are now 13-3. With this loss, the Denver Nuggets are now 9-8, just to get a sense of where they are. Last but not least, jumping out to Oakland or Golden State, the Warriors hosted the Toronto Raptors from north of the border. The Warriors would end up beating the Raptors 119-104 after they outscored Toronto by 12 in the first quarter and ran with that momentum. On the losing end of this matchup, the Raptors were led in scoring by their elite starting power forward, Pascal Siakam. He finished with 21 points and 6 rebounds in 34 minutes. He shot 8 for 17 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3 as well. The Golden State Warriors on the winning end were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Jordan Poole. He finished with 33 points and 5 turnovers in 31 minutes. He shot 10 for 13 from the field, 8 for 11 from 3, and 5 for 6 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, former number 1 overall pick, Andrew Wiggins, would finish with 32 points and 6 rebounds. He did all this in 33 minutes as he shot 12 for 20 from the field, 6 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their goated starting point guard, Stephen Curry, finished with 12 points, 2 rebounds, and 8 assists in 37 minutes. He shot 2 for 10 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 7 for 7 from the foul line. With this win, the Golden State Warriors are now 15-2, as the Raptors are now 8-10 at this point in the year. And looking at what's going on with soccer, starting in the Premier League, Manchester City hosted and were able to shut out Everton 3-0, as their first goal came from their elite English forward Raheem Sterling. The other two would come from Rodri and Bernardo Silva. Tottenham Hotspur hosted Leeds and was able to pull off a 2-1 win at home, as both of their goals came in the second half to equalize and eventually take the lead over Leeds. Looking at La Liga, Real Madrid faced off against Granada, and Real Madrid would end up winning this one 4-1. They would score both of their goals before Granada scored, and Granada would even pick up a red card that Real Madrid would score off of in less than 10 minutes later. And then, of course, looking at the Serie A, the reigning Serie A champs, Inter Milan, hosted Napoli. They were able to pull off a 3-2 win, as the difference would end up being a 61st minute goal from Lautaro Martinez, as Napoli's second goal came after Inter scored its third. But that was a very big win for them, and that's virtually everything that I've got for you from yesterday. And once all of today's matchups are done, I will come back tomorrow on Tuesday, November 23rd, for another episode of The Elite. And until then, I want to thank everyone once again for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode tomorrow. I want to thank the NCAA, the NFL, and NBA websites. And of course, like I said, I'll catch you tomorrow when all that's done. And until then, thanks for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow. Peace out.